Hey everyone, it's Infinity Gamer here, and I am fresh, well, fresh is the wrong word. I am straight from a tournament in New Zealand, INZO, which was hosted up in Auckland, and this video is going to break down how the tournament went, who was there, how they placed, and how I did in the tournament itself. As I said, INZO was a tournament based in Auckland. There were 13 players from all across New Zealand there. It was hosted at Hobby Master, and again, thank you so much to them for hosting the tournament. And also, before I get any further at all, I also want to thank Gareth Hay for hosting the tournament, putting it on, and putting in all of the effort. I really do appreciate it. It was a fantastically run event, despite some challenges that you faced. So wouldn't have known had you not have mentioned it, but it was great. A good bunch of people as well. People that I've played against at Intelcom. If you've seen the video for that, I'll link up there. That was my first ever tournament. This is now my second ever tournament. Hopefully learned a little bit since then and could take some of the things I learned from Intelcom into INZO. First, what was the format? It was a 2-day event, 5 games. First day, you can tell I'm straight from this thing. My brain is still cooked from thinking of strategies and stuff, so forgive me for that, but I wanted to get everything down while it was still relatively fresh in my mind. 2-day format. First day had 3 games. We started off with decapitation, then we went into unmasking, and then it was supremacy for the final game of the first day. Then day 2, we had 2 games. We had info sweep, which was a custom special mission that Vol SC had actually created. Very, very fun mission. I'll tell you a little bit about that when we get to that section. And then the last one of the second day was Panic Room. So yeah, 2 on the final day. I ran Vanilla 012 because I still have a little bit of a soft spot for them. However, I do think this might be my last tournament playing Vanilla 012 or 012 as a whole. Not because I don't like the faction, but because I think I need a new challenge, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a later video. I appreciate that this video is coming at a bad time because Corvus Belli have swept us with so much information, so many new videos about tag raid, about everything. I will get to those, but this first, the rest second. In terms of the tournament, so my lists, I will put them down in the description of this video in case you want to check them out, but I ran 2 very similar lists because lots of thinking involved. I didn't want to have to think too much. I wanted them to be similar, and I thought that I'd kind of hit upon a good recipe already with just some slight variation. Talking through my list 1, this one had 2 Team Sirius, it had 2 bikes, 2 gangbusters, links, a whole bunch of stuff. You can see it all there, so I won't rattle off too much. The plan for this list was to use it for the faster objective grabbing missions. Things like unmasking, where booping buttons means that you can then go kill stuff. That was the plan for this list. I even thought decapitation, this list would be good for because I had things that could move up. I had the links, which might be able to take out a lieutenant if it was mobile. And I also thought for supremacy it might be good because I could move around quite a bit. But I was actually on the fence as to whether I would use list 1 or list 2 for supremacy. List 2, I think I pretty much always have planned for the second day with Panic Room and Info Sweep because they're very similar. They have a big objective room in the middle, and these lists were geared towards throwing something big in there and making my opponent deal with that. So list 2, what was different about that? Well, I dropped one of the Law Keepers, I dropped one of the Team Sirius, and I dropped the links to basically fit in Hector, who is excellent in something like Info Sweep and also Panic Room, Biotech Vor, for those of you who are still thinking N3. The reason for that is Hector has a lot of the bonuses that those missions value, so like character, specialist traits, difficult to get out, is hard to hit. I should have probably used it for one of the other missions, but let's step away from the theory. That's how I crafted these lists. You can have a look at them. A couple of the units that I was most excited to use within both of those lists were the Law Keepers, because they can run up and do quite interesting things. The Gangbusters, I love them, and that's why I've got 2 in both lists. One of the things I had realised with Gangbusters leading up to this and while I was crafting the list was that I could coordinate order cybermask them to turn them both into impersonation tokens, and that might make it really difficult for them to be removed. I did do that in one of the missions. And another thing you can do is obviously coordinate and lay mad traps with the Gangbusters. So I had great plans for the Killer Hacker Gangbusters. The Raptor, I just love that. Again, Killer Hacker, so I can cybermask and run a flamer up there as an impersonator, which is difficult to stop if you fancy that. And then obviously the Repeaters from Team Sirius, who I just love generally anyway. They're great units. So how did the first day go? Not great at all. like really bad. If you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen the updates because I was actually doing live updates as to how each game went as much as I could. The first game, I had one of my horror moments, mostly because of the opposition I faced. It was Steel Phalanx, and I hate Steel Phalanx because Achilles has done horrible things to me in the past and in the present. In fact, at Intel.com, if you've watched the video, my last game was against an LF list that featured Achilles, and he tore through my entire army, put me in retreat, basically at the end of round 1, but I won that because I was in retreat. I then had my turn and I could go press the buttons and I could win on the objective points, but it still felt horrible being smashed through by Achilles. And here I was facing Hector and Achilles. Now I fell into my opponent's trap. He's an excellent player. What he did was he deployed everything to one side. Hector, I think Patroclus may have been in there, a couple of other cool sounding things. It was a 5-man core on that side with Hector, so I was really scared of it. I deployed defensively, I was going second and I deployed second. Deployed defensively around that, putting mad traps, Team Sirius, everything that I could in their path, and then he plonked Achilles on the opposite side of the table. I had left that side completely exposed, and it did exactly what it was going to do. Achilles tore through my flank, tearing everything apart. In decapitation, there is no retreat. However, I think I probably went into it at round 2. Things were brutal, and I had no way of getting out of it. The only things I did well was I did go proactively towards the Hector core, which was prone and over to one side, because I knew I needed to kill Hector as the lieutenant to try and score points. The first thing I did was I ran up the Raptor towards there, but unfortunately that didn't survive very well at all. I then tried Team Sirius. I put the dog forward, and then when he was faced with either a heavy riot stopper, I then chose to use the repeater to hack and isolate Hector, which I thought was a good idea. The hack went through. He had dodged. He had chosen to dodge when he saw the Sirius bot come towards him, expecting the heavy riot stopper. I then did the hacking program. My hacking program went through and succeeded, but unfortunately he made his BTS saves, so was not isolated. And then unfortunately the repeater died and took Team Sirius handler with him in his his turn. Then I threw up Varangian. Did not go super well. I tried to get a gangbuster in there. I basically threw everything I could to try and get to Hector. I ended up chipping off 1 wound somehow. Again, in the fog of the battle, I don't quite remember how, but it was through excellence, I'm sure. And then my last model died at the bottom of round 2. He took out my gangbuster who was hiding in a building, ran Hector up, and just smashed it. I did kill Achilles, but it took 60% of my army. He tore through everything on that side, as I said, which included shooting one of the other Team Sirius from a distance, shooting one of the gangbusters from a distance. I forgot to deploy my Kaita Flash Pulse bot just because my brain was so fried, so I started with 1 less model and 1 less order than I wanted to, and a Flash Pulse, which could have changed the game because we all know that Flash Pulses win games. He tore through my Epsilon HMG MSV2. He then found the Omega, who was actually a Cho, and killed her. Killed everything that was trying to defend and support her. And then killed my Lynx, who came out maybe slightly too late because I probably should have brought it out as Achilles was running around to give him a choice between either killing, one of my Law Keepers who was on the other side of the table, which he mercilessly took out. I probably should have popped the Lynx up there, so he actually had to choose as to which he was going to shoot, and obviously the Lynx being mimetism and stuff like that would have been harder. Lots of bad decisions, but it was a great list and my opponent was excellent, so I lost that one 10-0, which was a horrific way to start a tournament. But I will say this, the field at INZO, I feel, was some of the best players that we have in New Zealand. And there were no seal pups, as one of my opponents mentioned it. I was probably the least experienced tournament player there. Some other players had maybe played in one tournament, which was like a tag tournament before that. Others had played in others, but that was only my second tournament for sure. I had loads of recreational games against my local players, but yeah, that was only my second ever tournament. But looking at the pool, excellent players all round. I couldn't actually find someone who I was like, that's a new player that I actually stand a chance against. Everyone was pretty seasoned and definitely good, and most of course, finished higher than me in Intel.com. So yeah, I knew I was in for a rough ride, but I didn't realise it was going to be this rough, ending my first game 10-0. So going into the second game, a little bit broken and battered, but every game is a new opportunity to score. This one, I believe it was against Invincible Army, and I'm happy to be corrected, but I will check just to be sure, and there'll probably be a little graphic that comes up at the bottom that says whether I was right or wrong. I think it was Invincible Army. There was just amazing deployment. Liam, my opponent, was just amazing in terms of his deployment. He had a core link of some sort that had an MSV2 sniper at the top, but then looking over anything that was good was then like a AP HMG that was over on this side. The firing lanes were amazing. I couldn't do anything. So my lore keepers spent the entire game not using their impetuous and not moving, because if they'd have gone anywhere, they would have been shot by one of the two. The Varangians with their smoke didn't matter because the sniper had MSV2. It didn't make a difference at all. And my Epsilon, who was the only thing that I'd actually brought to maybe deal with another sniper, he had MSV. So smoke was going to be fine, but it was going to be a straight shootout, but then he was in a 5-man link, so was going to outgun me each time. So the strategy I took was to throw the Raptor up one side to try and take out the Harris that had the, I believe it was an AP HMG at the core. There was a Jujak in that and some other cool stuff as well, including a Killer Hacker and something else. So I ran the Raptor up. I had to do some cautious moves to get through some spaces where the sniper couldn't see me. I had to cyber mask at one stage. I did manage to get a console, which then revealed, so this was unmasking, if I haven't mentioned that already. I did manage to get a console, reveal the HVT to be not the special designated target, but I've just remembered how bad this went. I then ran up with my heavy flamer Raptor Diva bot. On my last order, I run up, I get into a fairly defensive position. I try and flame the HVT. He basically survives, so I have to spend another order flaming the HVT and eventually kill it. And then I run the Diva bot last order, basically put it so that it's facing this Harris, so that he's then got to deal with it, and then tuck my Raptor controller into a little corner. Well, I've got the image, I'll throw it up to show you. I thought I'd done really well because I'd given him a problem in his Harris, and the core was then going to have to come down and move and do stuff. However, he did spend 1 or 2 orders trying to deal with it. So the Diva bot just tried to flame, and he either dodged successfully or made his armor save, so nothing happened. And then he realised that there was a Killer Hacker in there, and that I obviously had my Killer Hacker Raptor Handler. And so he then just tried to blow his brains out using Trinity, and failed the first time. I tried to Trinity back, but obviously I'm on burst 1 and ARO, he's on burst 3. We're both on +3s and all that nonsense. First one doesn't do anything. Second one, unfortunately, goes through and he kills the handler, so the Diva bot's then no longer a problem. And then he goes through and just presses buttons, not without... so the only thing of note really was the Epsilon versus that sniper, is that he did try and kill it. The HMG did okay. I think I managed to get a wound on it, which was fantastic by comparison. But then obviously the HMG Epsilon dies because the dice just aren't in its favour. So the lucky ARO was good. And then once the HMG's gone, there was basically free reign to pretty much run around the table because of just, you know, firing arcs and things like that. I was deployed quite defensively. He could just move around, pick things off. He played the mission very well. Didn't actually think about like sweeping off all of my units. So whereas in the first round I had nothing left on the table at the end, so I had 0 victory points at the end of that round. It was a complete smashing. The second unmasking I end with 40 victory points, so a lot better by comparison. However, again, I don't score any actual objective points or anything like that, very similar to the first round, because any console that I did have, he turned back to his side. I killed 1 of his specialists. Oh, so actually I did get a point for killing a specialist. However, he got points for killing my designated target, which was the magic one, killing all of the others, not having his designated target killed, having more consoles, a point for every console he had, which was all 3. So again, it was less of a smashing, 10-2. So I could see my improvement curve going up. However, still less than ideal. The third game of day 1, I actually got drawn a bye. That was the downside of there being 13 players, was not perfect matchups every time. But I think by that stage I was actually quite happy to have a bye, just to collect my thoughts and try and understand what I wasn't doing right. To be perfectly honest, I couldn't look back at either of those and see what I was doing wrong. So I played the TO, Garth, and we played Supremacy, and this time I used my second list with Hector in it. He gave me some great feedback towards the end. He analysed how I was playing and basically said the thing I'm doing wrong is I'm committing my big stuff in the first round. I'm feeling like I need to do everything first. And I said, well, that's because typically when I play, I don't have any orders in round 2 and round 3. So round 1 is the only time where I actually have orders. And admittedly, I still had Achilles in the back of my head who tore through my order pool. But he did say that part of the reason why I don't have orders in round 2 and round 3 is because I've committed the big stuff. And I've left myself exposed, and because I've gone so far forward, it's then easy to pick off everything that I have, even when you don't have an Achilles tearing through. He admitted that my deployment in that first game was probably part of my undoing, was going so far one side, I played into his trap and left a flank open. So had I have deployed my gangbusters and my mad traps and my repeaters in a line, and defensively with their 16-inch for repeaters and mad traps, he actually wouldn't have been able to come through with Achilles without risking it quite significantly. So that was just a deployment mistake. But in terms of how I then play my list, I commit the big stuff early. I throw a Raptor into a suicide run. I don't push the Varangians. I keep them back because they might be useful later, potentially. Or I commit something like Hector, which is what I did in my game against him. Playing Supremacy, I put Hector forward early because I wanted to score the zones. And I did in round 1. I scored 2 points in round 1 for owning the zones. But I played all my cards in round 1. And so then in round 2 and round 3, he was basically just trying to undo what I did. And again, it's a mission that scores very well at the end of rounds and also at the end of the game. So waiting and seeing what they do is a good strategy. So I went home that night and did think about it. And I did see the error in my ways. I actually chatted to my wife, and she was saying, no, you just need to listen to Gareth. Just do what he says. Hold back in your first round and then commit round 2, round 3. Just be defensive round 1. I then looked at the missions for the second day, and I thought, well, with Info Sweep, I definitely want to go first because it scores at the end of turn 5 and turn 6. So if you hold the objective room, if you hold more consoles, you get more points at the end of turn 5. And then if you can continue to do that in turn 6, you get even more points and all of that sort of stuff. So I went into Sunday knowing that for the first round, I wanted to go first. And I knew I wanted to take the Hector list because, again, in a panic room or in a central room situation, throwing a Hector in there makes it very difficult for someone to remove it. My first game on the Sunday was up against Hexer. He was bringing Vanilla Pano, had Joan of Arc, had... What's the other note? He had loads of stuff. Now, my problem here is that I don't play against Pano at all very often, so a lot of it I'm not super familiar with, unfortunately. But I will try and link to Isaac, or show Isaac's lists here, just so that you can see what he was running. He won the whip and chose to go second. Chose to deploy second, which played into how I wanted to run this round anyway. So I kind of was a bit more confident because everything I planned for went this way. I think if I'd have had to have gone second, I may have been a bit more flustered and not known what to do. He also deployed extremely defensively. Everything was prone. Pretty much nothing was up out in the open. So my Varangians moved forwards. My gangbusters could move up a little bit. I actually managed to get... I'd always planned on doing it, but my Varangians ran straight in line, and I deployed so that they could basically run straight forward. And with it being an infinite height building, I kind of knew I would have cover. Not cover. Line of sight blocking, so total cover. Again, managed to pull that off straight away. And I listened to what Gareth had said and listened to what my wife had reinforced and just committed the warbands. Just committed the 12-point Varangians into the room to start with. Now, how Info Sweep is scored, and again, I'll link to the mission or show it right now, but with how Info Sweep is scored, if you control the center room, then you get an extra dice roll and +3 to capturing the consoles. Now, at the end of round 5, if you dominate the center room and you have more consoles, you get a point for each, which is excellent. And then if you can do the same in turn 6, you get points for doing that too. So I knew I needed to hold that center room and have more consoles. So at the end of round 1, I'd managed to move bikes, gangbusters, Varangians. With the Varangians holding the center room, I could move everything up and just know that I was pretty much going to get the consoles if I got there. I managed to get 4 out of the 6 consoles by moving my gangbusters up and everything like that. And I had 2 Varangians by that stage Varangians in the centre room. So I was fine, but then obviously in his turn, he could have flushed me out. Now, I think he focused on hunting what he knew was my chain of command, because I had Hector, so he knew that was my lieutenant. But he'd also kind of been one of the people who put into my mind the idea of having an Omega as actually Cho, pretending to be an Omega with Mimeters -6 to try and keep her protected. Now, I'd deployed my Hector and my Omega quite close together, basically so that Hector could cover, and that ended up being what happened, admittedly not until round 2. But yeah, he brought up this big, scary, begins with M, Magister Knight, who came up, hit the Raptor, killed the Raptor, took a wound from the Flamer. My team Sirius was doing long shots with SMGs to try and cover. Basically, he dodged to try and clear the mad traps, which he did very well. So the Magister Knight came up and did an excellent job of doing everything it wanted to do. The only challenge it had was then it came around the corner to try and hit Cho. It actually, unfortunately for it, ended up having to go slightly higher than Cho because of how the terrain was to come into contact. Killed Cho easily. Bit a nanopulsar when I revealed Cho, and then Hector ARO'd with the Spitfire. And then that was the Magister Knight gone, and Omega with Cho. Then in my round 2, I pretty much committed Hector into the room, because then I was like, well, actually, I think I can do that because nothing's really coming up. But I pushed the repeater forward just to make sure that if anything went into there, I could potentially spotlight it. I had my Millicent sat to one side just so that I could get into the room. But again, like he didn't put a major push into the panic room. There wasn't huge contesting there. I could pick off anything that was heading that way, and it actually ended up okay for me. Hector got into the room in the end. I isolated a really important model, which was a hacker, so could have created some problems for me. I think I just got very lucky. The only thing I didn't get lucky on was I tried to kill his flash pulse bot with not only my Millicent. I took 5 orders, hitting it with a missile launcher, couldn't kill it for the life of me. It was Mimeters -3. I just couldn't kill it, and then it couldn't flash pulse me, so just died, nothing, everything bouncing off everything, nothing happened. It was memorable for how rubbish it was that I couldn't kill it. I even tried, on my way into the panic room, Hector tried to Spitfire across, couldn't kill it. It was an indestructible flash pulse bot. It was excellent. So, and then I got Hector in there, I was fine last round, everything was sitting pretty, and then Joan had to climb down from the top of a rooftop, and had to basically take 2 or 3 orders to do that, and by the time there were then orders left, Joan couldn't quite make it into the room, or got eaten to try and do a move and then got killed, but that was like a last... Oh, no, Joan did survive. Sorry, I'm now... The brain cells are firing back up again. Don't forget, this only happened yesterday. My brain is pretty fried. Joan got into the room, absolutely fine. I had a Varangian and I had Hector in there. When we tally up the points at the end, obviously Hector's 67 points with the Spitfire or something like that, and then the Varangian's 12 points, and Joan's actually only like mid-30s, 40s, so no contest there. My opponent didn't manage to turn 1 console, and that was unfortunately it, just with AROs going very well for me. Didn't manage to flip any back, so I managed to win that one as a 10-0, which was big and brutal and probably didn't reflect how well he played. But that's the nature of it. When you're dominating in that particular mission, you continue to probably dominate. Then the last mission of the day was Panic Room, which is Biotech Vor to all of you who kind of know it by a different name. And again, I had the similar sort of strategy. So there's no consoles to boop in that one, I don't seem to think. But you've got to basically get into the room, and dominating the room at the end of each round gives you 2 points. And if you're doing it with a character, or someone who's got NCO, or someone who's got veteran, or that sort of chain of command, sorry, not veteran, chain of command, then you get an extra bonus point to that. So again, very similar situation. I think I wanted to go second in this one because it's more about at the end of the round than in that turn 5, turn 6. So I wanted him to be in the room and then for me to try and clear and me to try and hold. And again, my opponent won the whip roll and chose to go first. So exactly worked out well for me. That's the only strategy I had, and it was working well so far. Similar kind of deal. Now, unfortunately, I was against Steel Phalanx again. I was having flashbacks for the first game of day 1, my last game of Intelcom. and there was Achilles there, and I was just, I immediately just thought, this is terrible. I'm going to die, but at least Hector might make this a bit of an even match against Achilles. So his first turn, he didn't activate Achilles with any of his orders, apart from maybe one, his lieutenant orders. He came up, and I was so surprised. As soon as I saw his order pool, I was like, I know what's going to happen. You're going to activate Achilles, you're going to spend this entire order pool on Achilles, and you're just going to charge through me, and it's going to be painful. But he didn't. He had this model with a kind of Daverbot. It was basically a clone of a Raptor, apart from, I don't think it was a killer hacker. Moved that up the table excellently. Came around the corner. I managed to deploy my Gangbuster and my Team Sirius right on my edge because they succeeded in their deployments in the exclusion zone, which I was very lucky to have. And yeah, brought the bot round, flamed the Gangbuster and the Team Sirius dog and the Team Sirius handler. I was incredibly lucky to make my dodges. The handler, was back. The dog was forward. I didn't really manage to do anything of note there. And in fact, only actually killed the Daverbot in my turn. He managed to get a body, I believe, in the room. Yes, he got the character handler. So starting off at the end of round one, bottom of turn one, his turn one, he managed to get his special dude in the room. And so my focus was to remove him. I threw my Varangians up again, which was part of the strategy. I did lose a Varangian to the overwatching Phoenix, I believe it was. That thing was a pain. Raptor, I Cybermasked it and moved it up so that I didn't have to worry about the AROs coming from above. I didn't have to worry about the Flamer. I took out the bot using one of my Varangians, one that was slightly further away, or my Lawkeeper. One of the two shot it from a distance, and it wasn't a problem from that point on. Yeah, and then I Cybermasked my Raptor up. I got the Daverbot into a position where it could get Achilles and also the overwatching snipery APHMDG dude on the rooftop, and then went into the room and tried to kill the handler dude, which I did with my multi-rifle, I believe, or my light flamethrower. Anyway, he ended up dying. The Daverbot didn't do so well. I obviously hit Achilles, hit the guy on the rooftop. They both dodged and succeeded their dodges, so nothing of note there. And then I lost my Daverbot in ARO. So yeah, that was a bit rubbish, but that's okay because that was the point. But I had the NCO Raptor in the room on his own at the end of that turn. No, with the other dude. Sorry, with the other dude because I didn't kill it. However, I had more points in there and I had a specialist, so I scored the 2 maximum and he scored 1 for having the specialist, his special NCO chain of command dude in there too. So 2-1 at the end. I'm happier with this, but now my Raptor is potentially facing an Achilles in the face. Now that's kind of exactly what happened. He did move his link team across the bridge to try and watch down in my area, and my Gangbuster, that was also in the room because I'd moved that in there. I think I'd Cybermasked it at this stage, so it was harder to kill. Apologies for the rain, it's just set in. But yes, and then I just get incredibly lucky to win this game. Hector versus Achilles, and I somehow save with Hector 3 explosive CC attacks. So that's 9 armor saves I'm having to make. I make them all consecutively, so one attack after another, and then eventually Achilles dies to Hector. And that swings the game in my favour, because then I end up not only having, at the end of that round, the character in there, and I have someone in there, so that gives me the 2 extra. I also managed to spend my last couple of orders to get my objective, and then I actually have more victory points alive. Not by much, only by 20, but that's enough for it to swing to a 10-2, I believe it was, victory. But had Hector not have saved those saves, it would have been a 7-4 victory, 7-5 victory in his favour. So could have really swung, and that was more just luck of the dice than any strategy. It was hilarious having Achilles and Hector go at it in the centre room. Absolutely loved it. Huge games. So I end up finishing 6th in the tournament after a horrific day 1. Listening to Garth really made a huge difference to my strategy, and just playing the mission and holding back my main attack piece until round 2, round 3. So that was my big takeaway from that. Fantastic bunch of people. I hate Aleph. There were 4 Achilles lists, and there were 3 Hector lists, including my O12 and another O12. 2 O12s there. There were a bunch of different factions. I've popped a list there that show you the rough number from a Facebook message that shows how many were there. It was excellent, but as I've said, this is probably going to be the last tournament where I run O12. I just want to try something different from now on. O12 is excellent. It proved that it can win games, so long as it's maybe got Hector in it. And it was excellent fun. Again, I need to say thank you to Hobbymaster. I need to say thank you for Garth for putting on such a great event. I'm going to be looking at trying to do a strategy tactics list building for beginners video soon, so watch out for that. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my ramblings about a tournament that I went to. I really enjoyed it. I love tournaments. The group here in New Zealand are fantastic. Thank you so much for watching. If you've got any questions, if I've forgotten anything, just jump in the comments below. I'll do my best to respond and get you the information you need. But thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. I will catch you soon.